Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and kind of not elaborating on it way too much because this novel has been published in 2015, and I'm sure that if you're into YA, you probably either read it or heard of it, or, you might have liked it or you might have hated it, but, probably it was on your radar at some point or other. So this is the first Rainbow Rowell novel I actually picked up and finished reading. Funny thing was that years ago a friend of mine gave me Fangirl, and I totally could not get into Fangirl. I didn't think it was a bad novel or anything, but I was not really in the mindset back then to start reading YA all over again, and I'm not a huge fan of contemporary YA, so I just sort of read the first two chapters and I was like, okay, no, this is not working out, especially since the whole plot seemed kind of weird to me because it was from the perspective of the main character, and also there was like some fan fiction and whatever, and I just couldn't care about it, I didn't really care about it all that much. But years later, I stumbled upon Carry On, and I've heard pretty good things about it. People said how funny it is, and I saw this gorgeous cover, and I thought to myself, hey, I might as well give this novel a try because it sounds like something I might love. And I'm a Harry Potter fan. I used to be a Potterhead when I was younger. I sort of grew out of it eventually, like, thank God, but I used to be a massive Harry Potter fan. So every time there's, like, something that's, like, kind of like Harry Potter or somehow related to Harry Potter, I always like getting that ting of nostalgia in me. And this is exactly what Carry On did. It, like, sort of brought me back to that time when things were, like, sort of more simple, and I was definitely more naive, and, like, I was younger, so life was definitely, like, different back then. But I really enjoyed Carry On its own. It was an amazing read. It was an amazing adventure for me. And I give it 5 out of 5 as a result. Like, totally, I mean, it's a shocker, believe it or not, but I'm giving it 5 out of 5 because it was so good. Like, honestly, there was no moment in this book when I was like rolling my eyes in frustration or being irritated at one of the characters or when I just got mad at the author for like writing awful stuff. At first, like, there were some moments that were a little bit like weak writing that I was like, but these were like very few and far in between, so I was really grateful for that. In my mind, Rainbow Rowell established herself as a really good, intelligent, insightful writer. And she picked up on a lot of issues that Harry Potter sort of didn't really address as much. Probably because Harry Potter is it's originally like aimed at kids, and you don't want to like toss very heavy topics they might not really be able to understand. At least I guess that was J.K. Rowling's intention. Maybe she should have wanted, like, every single reader to sort of, like, make whatever it is they want to make out of Harry Potter. But Carry On definitely touches on a lot of issues, like, under the guise of this, like, nice little fantasy book. It's actually touching upon a lot of topics that are really, like, loaded and are kind of heavy. So, I'm giving this book 5 out of 5. If you're intent on reading it, if you're curious about reading it, I wholeheartedly recommend it, especially if you love Harry Potter. And it's really funny, but it's also kind of like depressing sometimes. Most of the time it's funny, but sometimes it will make you kind of sad. So if you sort of want to read it, you probably want to like stop right now and probably go and pick this book up. If you already read it or you don't plan on reading it, you can like stick around and sort of listen to me like babble on about this book and how much I loved it. So let's start. So Carry On, in a sense, is very similar to Harry Potter. The main character is an orphan. His name is Simon Snow. He was not aware he was a magician until the principal of the magical school called Wetford, which is very similar to Hogwarts, sort of found him and said, Simon, you're a magician and you're one of the strongest magicians ever lived. You have to, like, come with me and I'll, like, teach you magic and stuff like that. So even in this book, there's like a nifty little map that sort of depicts the grounds, and it's really, really cool. I found it pretty useful. So there were very, very few things that I didn't like about Carry On. Most of the things I liked and thought they were like really brilliant, really funny. And it also talks about issues such as like race, but not in the conventional sense that we're used to it, like in terms of color, like in terms of ethnicity or religion or whatever. It talks more about the questions of racism. I don't know, magicism. I don't know how to call it in that sense. But Simon is very, very powerful, and he's admitted into Wetford. And there's a lot of people, a lot of different types of people going to Wetford. There's like people who are very weak in terms of magic. They can't do a lot of powerful spells. There are powerful magicians. There are magicians who are like mixed breeds, like with pixies. And his roommate is like a vampire. And the whole magic system used to be that only the strongest and the most and the pure-blooded magicians could basically attend Wetford. So even if your parents were magicians but you were not very good with magic, probably you will not get to go to Wetford. Probably you will not be able to sort of develop your magic and evolve. And a lot of the people in this novel, especially the older generation, they are preoccupied with power, and power not in the sense of, you know, money or status. It's more about magic. And there's a lot of instances when I was just like, you know, my eyes popped a little because it was like, whoa, that's pretty awful. Because Simon is so powerful, he attracts a lot of attention to himself, but you also often hear how some kids say, well, my parents sort of, my mom married down, or my dad married up, or stuff like that. And what they mean is that a powerful magician who marries a less powerful magician, and there's that risk of their kids being not very strong at magic. And there's also talk about how quite often parents choose to have only one child so that the magic won't share itself among the rest of the siblings, which I found was really interesting because we didn't have anything like that in Harry Potter, and this whole idea of magic and the magic system in Carry On was really fascinating. And also the way that spells worked in Carry On was not really about saying an incantation in Latin or something, you know, and pointing your wand at things. It was about like saying like mundane phrases like carry on, for instance, or up and away, or let me go, and stuff like that. And I mean, I can see how like some readers could have might have found it sort of idiotic, or, you know, like not very original, but I thought it was really clever because even at one point one of the characters says we need like normals, like people who have no magic, because normals come up with all these crazy phrases or like very catchy songs, and as long as it's like a very catchy song or a very catchy phrase that's being used over and over again, it's kind of like gains a lot of power somehow, and then magicians can actually use that phrase like clean as a whistle, you know, and they can cast the spell. And in that sense, it's like really interesting and really cool, because this is the first time I'm reading something like that, because most spells are often like made up words that are meant to sound like ancient Greek or Latin or whatever. But in Carry On, I guess it's part of like the attempt of like being funny, but I thought that it was like actually really clever. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the strong female characters that were in this novel. We have Simon's best friend Penelope, who's really powerful and really intelligent, and she ends up rescuing him quite often, so she's like sort of the equivalent of Hermione in that sense. And we also have like Simon's ex-girlfriend Agatha, who comes from like a very like sort of aristocratic in a way, aristocratic, like upper middle class family. And her parents are really nice, but they really are obsessed with sort of how powerful Agatha is. And they want her to sort of marry someone who has more power than she does in terms of magic, so that she can in that way sort of you know, go up in society and her kids will be powerful. Which is why they support her relationship with Simon that much, because they actually sort of see that match as a really good and fruitful thing for Agatha. But the truth is, Agatha like hates the magic world. She hates that people are so obsessed with purity and with magic and with power, and you have this strife between like the old families such as the Pitches and everyone else, and you have like this cluster of really powerful families who sort of control everything, and they want to only admit you know, other powerful magicians into their circle, and you sort of see how some people are fighting against it. And Agatha doesn't really want to fight against it, she just wants to get away, as far away as possible. She really hates it, it makes her tired, she just wants to be a normal person. And I found it so interesting because, I mean, in real life, most of us want to be extraordinary, we want to be different, we don't want to be like anyone else. And in this novel, you often see how being not like everyone else kind of hinders your existence, and it sometimes feels like a burden. And you don't really feel like, you know, you want to live up to these great expectations that people seem to have of you. And that was really, really fascinating. I thought it was like great. And we also have Simon, who is supposedly, you know, the most powerful magician, and he's supposed to stop the humdrum. The humdrum is like this creature that sucks out magic of places. So if you're a magician and, you know, and he comes to your house and he sucks out the magic, you feel really bad, you feel kind of depressed and empty on the inside, and in that particular spot you can't cast magic spells anymore. And I found that it was really, really interesting. So what the humdrum does is basically he creates like voids and hollows, and I thought that it was really cool. It was a really cool concept because he's like not trying to like, you know, kill magicians or kill like less powerful magicians or strong magicians. The humdrum is trying to solve the civil war of the magic world by simply eliminating all magic, because if all magic will be gone, you know, there's not going to be any more fighting, there's not going to be any arguments anymore, because people won't have anything to fight about. So Simon supposedly is on a mission stopping the humdrum. And Basilton, who belongs to one of these super powerful old families, kind of like wants to like just sort of get rid of Simon, because Simon is supposedly the heir of the new school principal, who is this very powerful mage. And a lot of the old families really hate the mage because he made the magical world sort of equal for everyone. And he sort of wants to eliminate the competition and the elitism that usually comes with magic. And Basilton and people like Basilton sort of like don't really agree with the mage, they don't agree with his systems, they don't agree with his mindset. So what they're trying to do is they constantly kind of like think of ways to get rid of him, although it's like pretty hard because he's like so powerful and he has a lot of leeway. So that's pretty much the content of the book until you realize how much deeper it is, really. And this entire thing takes place on the last year of Simon attending Wetford, which kind of reminds me of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So what happens is that Simon realizes in a way that he is actually the humdrum. He's so powerful. He was actually conceived in this super weird, borderlining satanic ritual, which gave him a lot of power. But at the same time, you know, he's a human at the end of the day, and humans cannot really handle all that power, so he was like broken. in a way, and he couldn't really like handle all the power that was like surging around and inside him. And every time he went off because he couldn't contain his magic, these like empty like holes were created around England, which was supposedly the insidious humdrum, but it was actually Simon, which was like very philosophical and mind-blowing, and also very, very sad. Because Simon's mom died giving birth to him, and the mage never told him, Simon, you're my son. He never like really, he never sort of admitted that. And even at the end of the day, he was disappointed in Simon. He was like, I thought that you're gonna be like the perfect weapon, but you suck basically, so I'm just gonna take your power for myself. And it was so heartbreaking. It really was, because Simon was looking up to the mage, and he loved the man, and then he realizes that this guy, who also happens to be his father, only saw him as a vessel, only saw him as a means to an end, and it was really, really heartbreaking. And another cool thing about this novel was the relationship between Simon and Baz, and that was really unexpected, that the two of them ended up being a couple, and I did not see it coming. Honestly, I was like, what? But I thought it was so cool because they are so different. Because Baz is so intelligent and put together and focused and ruthless and relentless, and he's like, the stereotypical, like, British villain in any sort of like spy film you've ever watched. He's like so awesome, and he likes wearing suits and designer clothes, and he's driving all these fancy sports cars, and he probably looks like, a young Tom Hiddleston or something. And like Simon is all over the place, he's not focused, he's like enthusiastic and kind of depressed and kind of like, I don't know, like ADD sufferer, and also like a really good person with a very big heart and very social, and they just seem so different from one another. But at the same time, both of them are sort of broken, because Baz is a vampire, and vampires are sort of hated by the magical world, and they're like always like sort of hunted, and it's like really not a nice like sort of situation to find yourself in. And Simon, he just cannot sort of find his place in the world because he has so much magic, and it sort of just like makes him like broken, because all this magic is constantly like leaks out of him. It's like he has a crack in him, and like the magic just leaks out. And I just liked how beautifully it was done, that they find solace in each other. It wasn't just a sense of, we're both like really hot, let's like hook up. It was so meaningful, and it was so beautiful that you see these people who couldn't be any different actually have so much in common, because they are united sort of by their imperfections, but they stay together because they make each other stronger. They don't really like sulk and wallow once they're together. They sort of find a new meaning and a new purpose to their lives. And I thought that it was so beautiful, and I really, really enjoyed that particular aspect of the novel. I thought it was great. I thought it was original. I thought it was like really different. And overall, I found this book really enjoyable and really deep. I know that I might be like overthinking it and everything, but I thought it was a really, really cool read. I really enjoyed it. Didn't think I'm gonna enjoy it as much, but it was fantastic. So this is me wrapping up a Carry On review. 5 out of 5. Totally awesome. If you like witty, sort of atypical novels, you should definitely check this one out. Also, another thing is that I was sort of disappointed with the ending, because I sort of wanted to know more about the mage and about his way of thinking, and I expected a little bit more insight and I didn't get it. And also the novel is told from a lot of different perspectives. So we have Simon, we have Baz, we have Penelope and Agatha and the mage sometimes, and Ab and Nicodemus and Lucy. So there's a whole bunch of people. And quite frankly, sometimes it will just get a little bit confusing for me because I'll be like, okay, because sometimes I'll just forget from whose perspective I'm reading the novel because it will just switch quite often. So keep that in mind, because if you sort of lose track of like the title of like from whose perspective it's gonna be written, you're gonna be like a little bit confused. So these are like the only things that I actually can complain about, but they didn't really like hinder or ruin my experience. So yeah, 5 out of 5. So thank you for sticking with my lengthy review once again. As you can tell, I didn't really make a list this time because I just knew what I wanted to say. I had very few, almost no bad things to say about this novel. A lot of fun. I highly recommend it. So if you read it and like if you didn't read it, whatever, if you feel like you want to comment or just, you know, if you agree or disagree with whatever I'm saying, it will be awesome to hear from you guys. So thank you so much, and yeah, carry on.